Are you longing to feel connected and not so alone? Longing to be happy and more alive? Badass Counseling is excited to announce the creation of Community Plus, a subscription-based private group of folks just wanting to more closely share their soul journey together with like-minded folks and with me, Sven. For a monthly fee, you'll get bi-monthly live Q&As with me, Sven, giving you a better chance of getting your own questions answered. A private community feed for you to post pictures, successes, struggles, joys, even the occasional cat picture, creating greater connection and help for healing and growth. Random drawings for free small group sessions and drawings for private coaching sessions with me. Priority access to becoming a guest on the Badass Counseling Show podcast. Unlimited access to my DIY video courses, Healing the Soul and Unleashing Your Greatness. And so much more. Community Plus is for people serious about their soul journey who want real growth, real help, real laughter, real connection, and true community. Join us now at badasscounseling.com.
From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven Erlandson, takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hi, guys. It's great to have you here. This is the Badass Counseling Show, and I am, well, for lack of a better name, the Badass Counselor. And I am here to take your questions, whether you are checking in from Six Nations, Ontario, or from Quebec, or from New Jersey, Tennessee, Scandinavia, or Romania. It is wonderful to have you here. I am joined in studio by my compatriots, KC in the booth and Rob the Rocket. Rob, what say ye?
I'm from New Jersey. I don't expect much. If the world ended, I would adjust.
There we go. That's all right. That's the New Jersey mentality, and I love it. Here we go. We're opening with an odd question that I'm not sure I understand, but I'm going to take a swing at it. Lucy asks, tips to stop food noise. I don't know if I know what we're talking about here. Like noises when people eat. If that's what it is, it's funny you bring it up because I am adamant. In my house, you have to chew with your mouth shut. Don't talk with food in your mouth, and absolutely no slurping. I'm a bit anal retentive that way because it drives me fucking bonkers. Now, I don't know, tips to stop food noises, just insist that no one do it, knows the rules. There you have it. I don't know what else that question might be. If you're more specific, Lucy, and I see the question later, I'll try to get back to it. All right, next question. This is a great question because it opens up something that I need to say. Courtney asks, what is your knowledge on borderline personality disorder and narcissistic abuse? This opens up something that I need to remind listeners of regularly, so I'm grateful for your question, Courtney. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, licensed mental health professional, none of that. I am a soul counselor who has had a counseling practice for 30 years, former clergyman. I've had a counseling practice for the better part of the last 11 years in Manhattan, New York City, on the East Coast. I have clients around the world, but I do not touch anything psychology. I don't touch it. I stay in my lane. All right. So with regard to that, talk to your therapist, consult professionals in that field. All right. Next question. Devil Blues over in Romania. Devil Blues from Romania says, why do resolutions lists fail? We start and then stop. And that's a great question. And we've all had that experience. This year, I'm going to lose 40 pounds. Or this year, I'm going to resolve to not be such a fucking dick. Or whatever it might be. The reason resolution lists generally fail is because a resolution is an attempt to change a behavior, generally speaking, right? Behaviors are up here on the surface of life, our everyday actions. Now, you may have heard me say this before, or if you've read my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, you know I go into this. And the title of the chapter is something along the lines of, trying to change behaviors never changes behaviors long term. Trying to change behaviors never changes behaviors long term. I'm an absolute believer that if you're just trying to change your behaviors by changing your behaviors, it won't stick. Why? Because you have to go down deeper inside of you. Those are your surface behaviors and actions. You have to go down deep inside to the core beliefs driving those behaviors. The core beliefs are things like fears, are things like pain, are things like core beliefs you've been taught about yourself, like I'm no good, or people can't be trusted, or the world is a scary place. Those core beliefs are what are truly driving your actions. And people say, well, no, not me, Sven. My principles are driving my actions, my values. No, principles are generally backfill. Principles are what we create to justify the action, to make it sound logical, to make it sound presentable so that others accept it. But what's really driving you is those core beliefs, the pain, the fears, and the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself that you can't even see. That's what's really driving action. So therefore, Devil Blues, in order for your actions up here on the surface of life, out in your everyday life, to truly change and stick and last, you have to go down to these core beliefs, which is why I am in the business of beliefs. I believe nothing changes until belief systems change. And you have a belief system that you have been taught about yourself. And until that changes, you are still stuck in old you and you are not moving forward in the version of new you. And again, this is why I wrote the book. There's a hole in my love cup. All right. Rob gave me a clarification on food noise. So Lucy, I'm coming back to your question. Lucy had asked me the question earlier about, what do you do about food noise, Sven? And Rob has told me that food noise is a barrage of thoughts that nudge you to food you crave when you're trying to lose weight. As with anything, when you're trying to attempt something, there's always going to be those thoughts and those feelings that go inside of you, that are going on inside of you. And whether you're trying to put down the bottle, whether you're trying to stop eating, whether you're trying to change your behaviors, you have to go inside. And anytime you're having a barrage of thoughts, as you talk about in this case, Lucy, anytime you're feeling nudged towards that food, it's at that point that you have to sit down and you have to start journaling out all your thoughts and all your feelings, right? Because otherwise, those thoughts and those feelings are still inside of you. You guys have heard me say it before. If you never, ever remember a single word I say, all right? And I'm a dumb fuck, so don't fucking listen to me, all right? But if you remember one thing, just remember this. If you want to change your life, don't go for the good. Don't try to do more things that make you happy. Don't focus on positive and gratitude. No, for the long-term stick. I mean, those are good. There's nothing wrong with them, but they won't stick long-term. You have to get out of you your raw sewage. You have to get out of you the bullshit you've been taught about yourself. You have to get all the crud out of you because that's what's corrupting the process. If you're having to do gratitude lists all the time, which are good, but that means you're having to convince yourself. Why would you be needing to convince yourself unless you had some belief inside of you saying, I suck, or life sucks, or my life is so hard right now. And it's like you're trying to talk yourself out of it. Why not just acknowledge the truth of it? Welcome all of those feelings. Engage in the process daily of flushing out all those feelings and memories and thoughts so that you're not always have one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. Stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. Fuck that. Get the crud out. If you do nothing else in your life, get the crud out. So if you're dealing with food noise, you need to be flushing out the thoughts and the feelings and all that goes with it. All right, next question. Here we go. Shannon asked the question, I'm so fed up with the inconsistencies and lies from my ex who is a narcissist. How do I handle this? Well, my question to you is, Shannon, first of all, if you're fed up, that means you're angry, you're frustrated, you're tired, you're sad. All the feelings got to come out. That's what the journaling's about. Writing your ex letters that you do not send, raging on them. Fuck you, blah, 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 blah. I'm so angry at you, blah, blah, blah. Get all the feelings out. Okay. But my question to you is, you say, I'm so fed up with the inconsistencies and lies from my ex who is a narcissist. How do I handle this? My question is, why are you still interacting with a person who is inconsistent and lies to you and hurts you? Now, if you have children and you have to interact with that person, I get it. I've been there. I've literally lived that. All right. And so you need to be flushing out all your feelings and your frustrations and so forth. And you need to be drawing hard fucking boundaries. Hard boundaries if you're ever dealing with narcissists or what I call extreme takers. Hard boundaries, and you have to protect your boundaries, limit your amount of interaction, but also what you need to be looking at inside of you that you need to be asking yourself, and you don't say that this is present, Shannon, but I'm challenging you. You need to be looking inside of yourself and saying, am I to some degree wanting this person to confirm my worth, to be nice to me? And of course you want to be nice, but is it possible that the reason you want them to be nice is because that makes you feel good about yourself? Are you in any way seeking to have this person sort of confirm the message that you matter or that you are good, that they're being nice to you makes you feel value? So if you are wanting something from someone who is a narcissist or an extreme taker or just a nasty person, If you're wanting them to treat you as if you have value and you need it in order for you to feel a sense of value, then you've got a problem coming into the relationship with a narcissist that they are now capitalizing on. And you not only need to cease seeking to have them value you, but you need to go into your own past and find out, where the fuck did I get the message that I don't have value, such that I'm looking to other people, like even a narcissist, to tell me I do have value. If you're needing someone to confirm your value, you are already in a tenuous, flimsy, weak position. All right? We all like that. It feels nice. But if you're needing that from someone, you've got to go back into the origins of your life to determine where my need to have my value confirmed finds its root. Because then what you're saying is, I believe in my less than value, or that I don't have value. So you got that message somewhere. No child gets spit out of the vagina of their mother believing, hey, I suck, I have no value. No, that lie got picked up somewhere, and you've got to determine that origin, because the only way we solve problems long term, create real solutions rather than have solutions, is by going to the origin of the problem. And that is that belief that you were that you were taught. And furthermore, if you are needing someone to confirm your value and you happen to bump into an extreme taker in your life, whether a lover, a friend, a parent, a sibling, a coworker, as you have in this case, Shannon, you're in a relationship and enter a series of interactions with someone who is a taker. They are going to capitalize on your own sense of lack of value. They're going to use the fuck out of you, and you keep walking back in because you're wanting them to confirm your value. And remember, people, anytime anyone has something that you want, they have power to make you fucking miserable. And they also have the power to make you happy. And so you keep going back to them, hoping that they'll confirm your worth and make you happy, but they keep fucking with you and making you feel miserable. But you're giving them the power by continuing to go back. And you're going back because you believe you don't have value. That's why you need to go into the origin of where the fuck this is coming from. All right, here we go. Next questione. Let's tinker with this one, you guys. Rob, I'm going to ask you to chime in. I just did a quick read on this one, and so we're going to play with it. This is from Christy Curtis over on Facebook. Christy says, my boyfriend's bestie, so my boyfriend's best friend, is a woman. Okay. And she told me in my ear on New Year's that I outshine her. What does this mean? Well, I would love to know what the tone of that statement was. Was she saying, you outshine me? Like, you fucking bitch, I'm going to fucking undermine you because you make me look bad, or I don't look as good to my best friend, and so I'm going to potentially undermine you and fuck with your relationship with your boyfriend, right? Okay, again, the read was, my boyfriend's bestie is a woman, and she told me in my ear on New Year's that I outshine her. What does this mean? If she said it maliciously, she's going to try to fuck with your relationship, but she might have said, you know what, you're cool. You fucking outshine me, man. I mean, I'm so close to him and I'm his best friend, but you really outshine me. In other words, it could have very well been just a really beautiful compliment.
That's my read.
That's my read too. So let's go with the goodness of humanity and assume it's that, unless I hear otherwise from you, Christy. All right. And Flower Mountains asks, over on TikTok, Flower Mountains asks, why do I feel like I am incapable? I can't do. And then it stops right there. Why do I feel like I'm incapable? The reason, Flower Mountains, and this gets, you guys, when I'm talking about core beliefs you've been taught to believe about yourself, this is it right here. Flower Mountains is basically saying, I don't get it. Where the fuck is this coming? It's like I feel like I'm incapable. I don't know. And it's fucking with my life. That's right. That means it's somewhere. When you were a child, when we are children, we are wet cement. Remember this, you guys. Listen to this. And I talk about this in the book. There's a hole in my love cup. We are wet cement. And you know how when the public works crew is out laying the new street and they're laying the sidewalk, right? And they pour the concrete and then they smooth it real smooth and they put the line in it that you can't step on and it'll break your mother's back. Okay. And they smooth it real smooth and then they put like tape around it and little posts and pegs around it so that when they leave, all the little peckerhead kids in the neighborhood won't come in and step on it, put their handprint on it and write with a stick, Tommy is a fink. You know, things like that, right? But guess what? Those workmen and those workwomen, they have to go to lunch or they go home at the end of the day. And then what happens? Inevitably, the little peckerhead kids in the neighborhood come out and they walk in and they push their hand in it and they get a stick and they write, Tommy is a fink. All right. When we are children, our soul is wet cement. And messages get pressed into that wet cement. Messages. Sometimes they're explicit. And very often they are implicit or even nonverbal. But those messages about you, about life, about the world, about your own worth get pressed into the wet cement of your soul, and they are down there, poured onto the very bedrock and hardened. And they become the core messages, the beliefs that you believe about life. They become fundamentally the virus infecting the operating system of your life. When I talk about core beliefs, I'm talking about the messages that got pressed into you that you can't even see. To which you say, well, how the fuck do I fix that if I can't even see it? You do it. I've created the tools. There's a Hole in My Love Cup and the Badass Counseling group on Facebook, etc. This podcast, all of these are tools to help you drill down. But you've got to be willing to go to it and see what makes it so scary to go in and find those messages that you were taught about yourself means identifying the implications. If someone taught you, and more often than not, it's a parent, taught you that, say, you're not wanted, or taught you that you don't really matter except to meet my needs. You're my mini-me. You're my little therapist. Or your job is to just be seen and not heard, or whatever those messages are. That taught you about your worth, about your value, about your lovability. And that message, those messages have been driving you your entire life. So when I just had this person on TikTok say to me, Sven, why do I feel like I'm incapable? Because you got a message at a very young age that you're not good. You're not good enough. And so you've developed this belief system without even being aware of it, that you're no good, that you're not capable. You got messages about your worth. And until you drill down to those messages and pulled all of this out and identified the origins of it, you're going to still continue to feel incapable or unloved or what have you. Next question. Rob?
Got one on YouTube here, Sven. I think this is an example of in a relationship where one person is misbehaving and making the other person feel like a bad guy. But here's the question from Ben.
This is from Ben.
My wife left me speechless when she just asked me why apologies are so important to me. Not sure how to respond. She gives a nickel apology for a $10 offense.
Right. And the truth is, some people, Ben, haven't been raised or taught to understand the value of apologies. Some people are actually taught that apology is the exhibition of weakness, that apologies are bad, and so they're taught to not apologize, or that some people just don't understand the value in how they help human interpersonal relationships. That if I have hurt you, Ben, and I know you know this, Ben, but if I've hurt you, that means that if I want to restore a relationship where we're both showing love to each other, I need to go and own. I need to go into you and say, I have hurt you and I'm sorry, and that's not okay. Because if I don't do that, I'm fundamentally saying it's okay for me to do this, right? And that is a denigration of your worth, and it undermines the very fabric of our relationship. So what you're struggling with, Ben, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that your wife doesn't see value in it and basically doesn't get why apologies are a big deal to you. And so you simply say, because when you are apologizing, you are showing me, and not just apologizing, because you said she's giving the 5-cent apology for the $500 crimes or the $50 crimes, right? And that's just throwaway bullshit. What you can go to her and say is, I need you to see and acknowledge the pain you've caused me. That's why it's important. And she, for the first 500 times, she may not get it. But if you keep holding that line, Ben, eventually she'll begin to see it. And let me tell you something that happened with me. I have someone who's very close to me. I was dating a gal for some time. And she would just walk all over me in conversations because she came from a very boisterous home, as I did, and lively conversation. Everybody's walking all over everybody else. And plus, she had been in business and, she had to make decisions. She was a manager of, 50 people in her department or whatever it was. And so she was constantly have to make fast decisions. So she'd come home and we're having conversations. She'd end my sentences for me. She would just talk over me, go in a completely different direction. And I had to every single time say to her, this is frustrating. Please don't do that. And she would say, well, we're just having conversation. I said, no, this isn't conversation. It is for you, but for me, it's not conversation if I don't feel heard. And so I need you to wait until I'm done. And she says, but a lot of times I know what you're going to say. And then I respond with this. Well, okay, just so we're clear. Let's just assume that's true some of the times, that then you're saying that some of the times you don't know what I'm going to say. All right. So why don't you just listen? But even if you do know what I'm going to say, if we're both going to the same conclusion that I'm about to say it and it's going to bring us to this final destination, but if you say it, it'll bring us to the exact same destination, then why are you saying it? But I know you're going to say it. Right. So why do you get to say it and I don't get to say it? If it's going to take to the same eventual conclusion, then why are you saying it? See, why shouldn't I be able to finish my own sentence? In other words, every time you interrupt, you are fundamentally saying that what I have to say doesn't matter. Well, here's what happened, Ben. She actually has, her brother works for her at the company. And what she began to realize as I was calling this out every time, you're interrupting me, you're not listening, and you're cutting me off. And she said to me, she said, Sven, it just hit me. My brother does that exact same thing. And it's so frustrating. I'm like, exactly. So she began to be in my shoes when I alerted to her how it didn't feel good and the toxicity of it for me. She began to be in my shoes in her relationship with her own brother. All right. So Ben, what you've got to do is just keep calling it out with your spouse and saying it matters to me because you are confirming my worth, my value, and you are showing me that you see the pain that you are causing me. And by forcing her to continue to see it, by forcing her to have awareness, eventually she'll no longer be able to hide behind the excuse. And eventually it's that she is choosing to do it, even though she is aware that she's hurting me. Now it's malice. Now it's a whole different ball game, but you just have to hold her accountable at every turn. All right. Much more to come right after this short break.
I came across the book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, on badasscounseling.com. I was trying to gain some insight into my past experiences and how they were shaping my present. Sick of being miserable all the time, and I wanted to do the work. I didn't know how. Sven's book made it approachable. He had gone through a lot in life, and I liked his perspective. I started looking forward to the new podcasts on Thursdays and Sundays. I realized I wasn't alone, and we can all use a little help from Sven.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
Hi, guys. We're back. I've got two questions here that are from two different people on two different platforms, and they're so in sync that I'm going to take them both. One is from user 879-423-7515494. And this person, whose number I will not repeat, says to me, Sven, I'm a therapist. I have worked on myself to love me. I'm divorced. I'm sad often still. Thoughts? And then this other person says over on Facebook, and it just slipped away because their scroller just scrolls even when you're trying to hold it in place. And this person basically said, Sven, how do you move on from significant heartbreak? And what do you do with all that pain inside? So it's basically the same thing. And so what I'll say to the person, you're a therapist, you've worked on yourself to love you, you're divorced, you're sad often still, your thoughts. I have no doubt that you've worked on yourself, and I think that's great because obviously that makes you a better therapist, and that you've worked on yourself to love you, which says that formerly you didn't. So you're coming from that original deficit, and I applaud you for doing the healing you've been doing. However, you're sad from the divorce. Healing myself and loving on myself doesn't make new pains go away. So when my parents died in their 90s during COVID, even though I'd done most of my own self-healing work back in my 30s, teens, 20s, and 30s, there are new pains that come, new crud that gets dumped into the love cup. In this case, it was the death of two parents, right? And so then that knocks you down. And the goal isn't to stand right back up when you've been knocked down. No, the goal is to stay down, to stay in it, to flush it all out till you're ready to stand up, having done the work of healing. So in your case, this therapist who's divorced and has done the work on herself, but still sad often from the divorce, you need to be flushing out your pain and your sadness and your love, especially the longing for the person. I'm betting there's some there. The feelings of loneliness, the fear of maybe never meeting someone again. All of these feelings are what are keeping you sad often and stuck often. All of the sadness, the fear, the pain, the longing, the lust, the betrayal, the disappointment, the anger, the rage, all of those feelings need to be flushed, need to be flushed, need to be flushed. And I guarantee the more you deliberately do that through your journaling, but especially writing that person letters that you don't send, the more you do that, you're going to begin to feel lighter, and it doesn't have to take forever. This is not a process that has to take years or even a year. All right. Depending on how long you guys were together. But the more you just flush that out and be dedicated to doing some of it daily, and really diving in and flushing and flushing and flushing, you're going to begin to recover much more quickly. And eventually you're going to realize, wow, I'm done. I'm done. It's like when if a child is allowed to cry after a trauma, or they've stubbed their toe on Marlis Moe, or they have hurt their finger, or that little girl at school called little Billy a jerk, or whatever it is, if they're allowed to cry it out and flush it out, you know what they'll eventually say? I'm done. I'm done. Because what is crying? What is sadness? What is anger? What is rage? What is hatred? What is sorrow? What is disappointment? It is the body's desire to purge an energy. It's to purge an energy, and we do it best with our words. But there's also the physical release as well. The physical release is not enough. It's not enough to just go running to get your high emotion out of you, because it doesn't get it out. It gets the physical energy out, but you still have to give that emotion, those feelings, those thoughts. You have to give them words, and the more you give them words, you flush them out. That's why, you like going talking to your buddies when your wife's being a bitch, or you go talk to your girlfriends when your husband's being a fucking jerk again, right? You want to go talk. Why? Because it feels good to get it out. Right. And so you don't, so even if you don't have a therapist, or you don't have a friend, or you don't have someone that you can talk to, you can make your journaling, as I tell people, the more you get into journaling, your journal becomes your best friend. Your journal is always happy to hear what you have to say. Your journal always wants to know what you're mad about most. All right. Make your journal your best friend, and writing those letters you don't send, and the other tools that I teach in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. Becky Loomis on Facebook asks, where can I find your podcast, Sven? iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, of course. That's how I do it on my phone. Most podcast sources have the Badass Counseling Show podcast. Just so you guys know, if you are live with us right now, we take these lives where I answer questions, and Rob edits them, and we post them as podcasts. So if you miss part of this, or you want to go back and listen, you can listen to it in the car, on your motorcycle, when you're out farming, plowing the fields, or whatever you're doing, when you're cleaning your house. You can turn on the podcast and get this listened to. I had a few therapists say, I get a lot of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, clergy following my show. The Thursday shows are the ones where I'm actually counseling people. And then the Sunday shows, and you can get them any day of the week. They just post on Thursday and Sunday. The Sunday show are these lightning rounds. And I have had a few therapists say that they actually take these lightning rounds and they play them for some of the groups that they, like a group counseling situation. They'll play it and they'll talk about the difference that come up. And so they'll use this in session, or they talk about how they recommend to clients that they listen to this episode of the show where I was counseling that person on that topic, or what have you. So we post this as podcasts, as resources for you guys to know that you're not alone, but also to get new insights into how to solve your problems in your own life. All right. Carly D says, my boyfriend interacts great with our kid, but not with me. Focuses little time on the relationship. And Carly D, let me tell you, this is tragically far too common in relationships, that very often, I've only done 1 or 2 videos on this, but very often the point at which a marriage goes bad is when the first child is born. Ooh. Hate to say it, hard thing to hear, but often what happens when that first child is born is that a whole new priority system develops, where the child becomes the central focus of the family, right? Or in the case of America, a lot of people engage in the American dream. I'm a big believer in the American dream, but the American dream often, classically, has taken the form of the wife falls in love with the kids and the husband falls in love with the work, and there the divergence begins, and that chasm grows greater and greater between the husband and wife. But you have to understand, the central force of the family is still that relationship between the spouses, husband and wife, wife and wife. Okay. And that has to be cultivated. That has to be nurtured. It really does, you guys. And not just date night once a week, but through conversations and time together to talk fear, pain, sadness, longings, aspirations, and not just in the car, but deliberateness. Anything that is going to be cultivated in life requires deliberateness. So, Carly D, when you say my boyfriend interacts great with our kid, but not with me, and he focuses his little time on the relationship, fundamentally what he's saying is the relationship isn't a priority for me. And the longer you allow that mentality to continue in him, the longer you allow him to treat you and your relationship this way, the greater that chasm between the two of you will become. So you have to stand up to him and you have to nip it in the bud and say, we need to make this a priority. And maybe you're going to have to be the one that leads in this relationship, because clearly his leadership inside the relationship between the two of you isn't sufficient. So you have to lead, which means you're going to get pushback. He's not going to want it. He's going to be recalcitrant. He's going to dig his heels in. All right. But you've got to start leading until it becomes habitualized that you two are taking time for each other. But you also have to set hard boundaries and stand up for yourself and say, I need X, Y, and Z from you. And if he doesn't give it after repeated attempts to get him to give it, then you have to face the realization that this person does not want a quality relationship with you. And the mere fact, and here's the really ugly part, Carly D, you say, my boyfriend interacts great with our kid, but not with me. So now you can't give the excuse, well, he doesn't know how to be nice, or he doesn't know how to have a good relationship with a person, because he's got one with your kid. He knows how. He's just choosing not to with you. Ow. Ow, that hurts. He's choosing to not treat you as well as he treats the kid. In other words, he's saying you are less than a priority. And as long, Carly D, as you allow someone to treat you as though you are not a priority, the longer you do that, the more you are saying, I don't matter. All right. I'm just going to take 2 more questions, then we're going to call it a day, folks. All right. Right. I've got one here from Christy. How do you go from survival mode to be happy? I love this question. All right. I love survival mode. Sometimes in life it's necessary. However, that is never, ever my long-term goal with my clients. I don't want you to survive. I don't want you to hit normal. My goal is to move people to thriving. Aliveness. Okay. And the way you go from one to the other is what's keeping you in the state of survival is that you've got the pain and the fears and the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself inside of you. And until those are out of you, they are still in you. And that's what's dragging you down. And you're just trying to keep your nose above water to get oxygen. The movement out of survival mode is effortless as you are doing the work of flushing out all that crud. Why? Because you're naturally becoming lighter. You're pulling the rocks and the manure and the dog poop and the sticks and the crud out of your love cup. And the more you get the crud out, the more it naturally fills with your authentic self. And your authentic self rises up from within, and you begin to naturally pursue those things, those people, those relationships, those paths that breathe life into you. So the fact that you are there says, the fact that you are still sort of in that survival mode says that you have crud inside of you, and all of that needs to come out. All right, next question. Cheryl White asked a question. We've all sort of been here before. This is Cheryl White over on Facebook. And Cheryl White says, why would an ex come back and then walk back out and then say things they know they hurt you? Why would they do it? Well, it's an ugly answer, but why do bullies bully? Because they can. They do it. They've got their own wounds. They've got their own shit, which is no excuse. But that's why they're doing it. It's their own joy in hurting others and also taking. So they come back because they want you to pour more love into their love cup. That's why they come back. They probably couldn't find anybody else because they're such a fucking dick. So they want you to come and pour love into their love cup. Then when they've gotten their fill, then they walk out and they put you down and they hurt you. Part of the reason that they're hurting you is to justify their actions of walking out. I had a woman leave me after a long-term relationship, and during the relationship, towards the end of it, and then afterwards, she would just focus on everything that I was bad about. I was the villain of every story, and she was the hero or the victim of every story. Every single one. And she needed to make me the villain. She needed to villainize me, because as long as she made me the villain, whether it was to others or in her own head, it kept the focus off of her, and that she might actually be responsible and that she might have problems. And some people have such low thinking of themselves. They've been taught to loathe themselves and they don't like themselves, that they have to focus on how bad everyone else is, because I'm terrified if you see me for who I really am, you'll see how shitty I really am. Or I need to blame you, as in your case here, Cheryl. I need to blame you to justify my walking away from you. He's hurting you. Why? Because he wanted to take your ex, hurt you because they came back to try to get love. And then when they walked away, they discarded you because they're going to go find love somewhere else. And then they tried to hurt you because that enables them to walk away and not feel bad about it. It's easier to just blame you. And then final question of the day is from, actually, there's 2 here. Kelly says, what if there's so much crud you don't know where to start? I always say start small. Start with one little piece. Start with what happened yesterday when that woman in the grocery store cut your cart off, and your egg spilled out of your cart, and you got pissed, and she just walked away, didn't even know, and it hurt you, and it pissed you off or whatever. Start there and journal on that. Start on that. Or, and there are people who say, well, my mind goes blank. I don't know where to start journaling. You guys just get the fucking book. All right. Just save yourself the hassle. Get the book. There's a Hole in My Love Cup, because it will step you through the process from beginning to end. Audiobook, ebook, paperback, Spanish, workbook. It's all at badasscounseling.com. This is the last question. Here we go. Sorry. M. Saltitude says, how do you build the trust back when married to a drug addict? Okay, first of all, what's blocking your trust is your distrust, but also your fear of them hurting you in the future. The fear of them doing it again. And so your fear, your distrust, your sadness, your frustration, your anger, all of that has to be flushed out of you. So that's what your journaling is for, and writing letters to them that they do not send. But the only way but the other thing is they need to be engaged in counseling, because if they're a drug addict, that's being driven by their own pain, and that needs to be addressed. If they're not in counseling, you are walking into a potential shitstorm yet again by going into a relationship with someone who's not getting counsel for drug addiction. That's just fact. That's just fact. If they are not actively engaged in healing their own shit, you're just writing your own death wish here by going back into a relationship. But what can you do to build the trust back? You have to hold them accountable at every single turn. And this is why, whether it's cheating or drug addiction, or somebody's just coming back into a relationship, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter if that person has changed and swears they won't cheat and is actually engaged in counseling and whatever else. It doesn't matter if the other person has changed. It doesn't matter if the drug addict has changed. It doesn't matter if the perpetrator has changed. Because if you have not changed, then if they start to slide back, you won't stop them. You will engage in the same enabling behavior that brought it to this point in the past. I have to change me so that I stand hard for my boundaries, so that I do not back down, so that I demand that you treat me well and treat me with respect and apologize and all of these things. If you do not change you, then you will continue, whether in this relationship or the next one, you will allow people to hurt you. And that is what the book is for. There's a hole in my love cup. That is what the book is for, Badass Wisdom. That is what the Badass Counseling group on Facebook is for. That is what Community Plus is for on the Badass Counseling site. It's a limited enrollment group. That's what this podcast is for, to help you change you. Because until you change you, it doesn't matter if everyone else changes. The problem is still lodged deep inside you, and it's the pain, the fears, and the bullshit beliefs you were taught about yourself. My fine people, we are done.
Yeah, got through a lot there in a relatively short amount of time.
How many questions did we get done, Rob?
We got 14.
I like 14, and in a less amount of time.
Yeah, it's very efficient, and you help so many people. You help me. You and half a Lexapro and some gummies, but yeah, no, it's you.
The old dog is on the Lexapro and the gummies, you know, that throwback to the 60s. Wild child, Rob. Were you a hippie, Rob, back in the 60s?
I had the hair of a hippie, but never really fully embraced that role. I did march on Washington back in the early 70s in protest, got tear gassed, and
no shit.
Badge of honor, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so just so for those of you who don't know, Rob got started in radio back, 55, 60 years ago, whatever,
yeah,
55.
Something like that.
Yeah, and radio when you were a student at
RPI,
Rensselaer Polytechnic
right.
Institute.
That's the one.
And then was in radio for a couple of stations. Cincinnati, was it? Or were you TV in Cincinnati?
TV in Raleigh and Cincinnati, and then New York, yeah.
And then built this amazing career in entertainment, was senior vice president at Paramount Pictures and Spike TV and a few other things. And so you guys are in the company of greatness. I get to be in the company of greatness every day with this guy.
I am. No, I am in the company of greatness.
No, hardly.
No, you are. No, I am.
Rob, so are you technically Vietnam generation?
Oh, yeah. I had a lottery number. Luckily, they didn't reach it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had number 156, and my draft board got to 154.
Wow.
It was close.
Wow.
Yep. But I probably would have been in Armed Forces radio, given my background.
How cool!
So I would have been there with what's his name from Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah, whatever.
What was his name? That guy?
Not Robin Williams, but the character he plays.
Exactly.
Yep.
Adrian Cronauer.
Cronauer, that's it. And Rob, it's interesting, Rob, because I referenced you the other day in counseling. I had a client talk to me and tell me that, my mom was of the generation where they didn't talk about feelings and so on and so forth. And the person had told me earlier in the session that her mother is only 77 years old. And I said, no. You can't play that card with a 77-year-old in the U.S. because that would have been Vietnam generation. And they were well ensconced in feelings. And that was, it had been around. I mean, Korea generation. My parents were counselors and soul counselors, spiritual counselors back in the 50s. So if you're 75 now, Christ, you were barely even born in the 50s if you were born. And so by the time 60s, 70s come around, no, that was very much part of the cultural conversation. Would you agree, Rob?
Absolutely. My father was a proud World War II veteran, but was absolutely thrilled when I did not have to join the Vietnam conflict. Look, opinion was divided about it, and there's no right or wrong. Well, you can make your own judgment. How about that?
Yeah. Well, and one of my brothers enlisted during the Vietnam War. So my eldest brother's Vietnam generation as well. But anyway, the point is that by now getting into people in their 70s and 60s is you can't really say, oh, well, back then nobody talked about their feelings, because it's bullshit.
That's right.
Because they did back then.
We absolutely did.
Yeah.
And, people say times are tough now. Times are always tough.
Right.
Which is why you got to flush out all that bad stuff and get on with the work to make yourself more authentic.
That's
please.
exactly right. All right, people, this has been great. Thanks for tuning in. I love you guys. And on behalf of my wonderful team, KC in the booth and Rob the Rocket, have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.